Pick up your phone right now. Any phone. iPhone, Samsung, a cheap Android you bought 2 years ago and keep meaning to upgrade. It doesn't matter which one, because somewhere inside that device, in the processor doing billions of calculations every second just to let you scroll through your messages, there is almost certainly a British design at work. Not British made, not assembled in a factory in Birmingham or Bristol, but designed in Britain by British engineers in a quiet city of cobblestone streets and world-famous university buildings called Cambridge. That company is called Arm Holdings, and most people in the United Kingdom have never heard of it, which is exactly what makes what happened next so important. If you're new here, subscribe now. We cover the stories about British business that the headlines skim right past. Arm Holdings was born in 1990 in a barn. Not metaphorically, a literal converted barn on the outskirts of Cambridge, where 12 engineers sat down with the goal of designing a processor so efficient it could run on a battery. A chip so small and so power-friendly that the world's biggest tech companies would line up to license it rather than build their own from scratch. That was the entire business model. Arm never made a single chip. It designed the blueprint and charged Apple, Samsung, Qualcomm, and hundreds of others to use it. And then it sat back and collected royalties every time one of those chips shipped in a device. By 2016, Arm's designs were inside more than 95% of the world's smartphones. Every iPhone, every Samsung Galaxy, every device you can think of. That is one company, founded in a Cambridge barn, quietly powering almost every mobile device on Earth. And the British government called it the jewel in the crown of UK technology. They weren't wrong. Then SoftBank, a Japanese conglomerate run by a visionary called Masayoshi Son, bought Arm in 2016 for £24 billion, delisted it from the London Stock Exchange, took it private, and at that point, the clock started ticking on a question that would define British economic credibility for the next decade. When Arm came back to the public markets, would it choose London or New York? 3 prime ministers tried to answer that question in Britain's favour. Theresa May's government lobbied for a return to the London Stock Exchange. Boris Johnson made the case during his tenure. And in January 2023, Rishi Sunak personally hosted Arm's CEO Rene Haas at 10 Downing Street, with SoftBank's Masayoshi Son joining remotely, in what was described as a final attempt to secure a dual listing in London. A sitting Prime Minister, in the most famous address in British politics, personally begging a chip designer not to abandon the country. Think about what that image tells you about where things actually stood. In March 2023, Arm announced it would not pursue a London listing. And in September 2023, Arm Holdings floated on the Nasdaq in New York, raising nearly $5 billion in what became the largest IPO of that entire year. The company is now valued at around £120 billion. London got nothing, not a single share, not a penny of listing fees or the prestige of hosting the biggest tech float of the decade. Gone to New York in a decision that sent a signal so loud even the people in Whitehall couldn't pretend not to hear it. So why did they choose New York? Follow the money, Because it is not complicated. The Nasdaq is where technology companies go to be taken seriously. When ARM floated in the United States, it was surrounded by Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and every other company in the AI arms race. The investor base is deeper, the valuations are higher, and the appetite for technology companies is structurally larger. The London Stock Exchange, meanwhile, has spent the last decade becoming the place companies leave, not the place they arrive. In 2023, while ARM raised nearly $5 billion on Nasdaq, the entire London Stock Exchange raised under £1 billion from new listings combined. That is not a comparison. That is a collapse. But ARM wasn't alone, and that is the part that should genuinely alarm you. In 2024, the London Stock Exchange saw 88 companies delist or relocate their primary listing to foreign markets. 88. That is the largest exodus from the London market since the 2008 financial crisis. Flutter Entertainment, the FanDuel owner that traces its roots to Irish and British betting culture, moved its primary listing to the New York Stock Exchange. Wise, the British fintech success story that disrupted the entire international payments industry, announced it is shifting its primary listing to the US Ashtead Group, a FTSE 100 industrial equipment company. CRH, the building materials giant. The list goes on, and it does not get shorter. And here is what makes those departures different from a simple preference for New York valuations. UK-listed equities once represented 11% of the global MSCI World Index, the benchmark that institutional investors use to allocate capital across the world. Today, that number is 4%. In roughly 2 decades, Britain's share of the world's investable market has more than halved. The money did not disappear. It went somewhere. It went to America. This is where you need to subscribe if you haven't already, because what comes next is the part the government does not want to talk about. When companies leave a stock exchange, they take more than their listing with them. They take the pension fund allocations that tracked their shares. They take the analyst coverage that kept their name in front of investors. They take the ecosystem of law firms, accountants, and advisors who built their practices around servicing those listings. And when they leave Britain entirely, when they follow a higher valuation all the way to a different continent, they take the jobs, the tax base, and the future pipeline of graduates who might have built careers in their orbit. ARM's headquarters remains in Cambridge. Thousands of engineers still work there. But the financial infrastructure, the investor relationships, the identity of the company as a British institution on a British exchange, all of that moved to New York. And the people who decide where the next ARM gets built will notice. The government's response to all of this has been the most frustrating part. Keir Starmer took office in 2024, promising to make Britain a technology superpower. He announced AI growth zones. He talked about turbocharging the domestic tech industry. And the week of one of those speeches, the British semiconductor company Alphawave announced its sale to the American firm Qualcomm. Wise announced its listing move to the US, and Deliveroo agreed to a £7.6 billion takeover by DoorDash, an American competitor, effectively ending its life as a British public company. All of that happened while the Prime Minister was still talking about the revolution. The structural problems driving this exodus are not mysterious. London offers lower valuations than New York for technology companies. The pool of institutional capital willing to invest in high-growth British tech is smaller. The regulatory environment for listings, while recently reformed, built up a reputation for inflexibility over years that companies like Arm still factor into their decisions. And post-Brexit, the EU investor base that once provided a natural market for London-listed stocks became harder to access. None of these problems were created overnight. None of them will be solved with a speech. Here is the bottom line. Arm Holdings did not leave Britain out of spite. The engineers are still in Cambridge. The designs still say "Made in the UK" on every blueprint. But the capital, the valuation, the prestige of being the home exchange for one of the most important technology companies in the world, that is in New York. When a company built in a barn in Cambridge that grew to power 99% of the world's smartphones decides the London Stock Exchange is not the right place for it, you are not watching an isolated business decision. You are watching the cumulative result of years of underinvestment in the conditions that make companies want to stay. The question nobody in government has answered clearly is this: if Arm chose New York, and Flutter chose New York, and Wise chose New York, and 88 other companies quietly slipped out the door in a single year, what exactly does London have to offer the next one? Because if that answer doesn't change, the exit queue is only going to get longer. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you in the UK watching this play out? Do you think London can compete with New York for the next generation of tech companies? I want to hear from you. If this video gave you something real to think about, hit subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss what we cover next. And share this with someone who thinks this stuff doesn't affect them. It does. I'll see you in the next one.